As the wolf packs moved further out to sea, beyond the range of patrol planes, their only danger was from the surface escorts. Sometimes these included large war vessels, but more often they were destroyers or corvettes, always too few in numbers for the work they had to do. For the United States was fighting a 7-ocean war with a 1-ocean navy. Day and night, the U-boats followed the convoys in mid-Atlantic, their crews tracking each change of course made by the convoy as the ships steamed eastward. Night hours were the hours of greater danger, for darkness, which concealed lurking U-boats, turned lumbering cargo ships into targets silhouetted against the sky.
Halt euch! Alles bereit? Noch einer, der nicht rankommen wird. Erstes Torpedo bereit. Feuer! Ein Volltreffer.
At the rate of hundreds of thousands of tons a month, Allied shipping carrying the wealth and hopes of America was going to the bottom. The toll was to be reckoned at as much as 1 million tons in a single month. Before the men of the U.S. Navy, fighting on grimly and doggedly, using what escort ships they had while waiting for more, were to see at last the tide of battle turning slowly in their favor.
Tauchstationen. Schneller, schneller, los! Stille, Stille. Macht kein Geräusch. Stille, Stille.
The convoy route to Murmansk, past Hitler's bomber bases in Norway, was the most perilous stretch of the Atlantic. Over this route, the Nazi Luftwaffe held pitiless and unbreakable sway. From their bases all along the coast, German long-range bombers lay in wait to spot the convoys and keep them under surveillance until short-range dive bombers could strike. At all costs, the Nazis were determined to stop the flow of Lend-Lease aid to Russia. Men of the Navy and the Merchant Marine knew that assignment to the Murmansk run was almost a sentence of eventual death. But for every ship destroyed, for every crew lost, a dozen others got through with their cargoes intact. And somehow, during years in which the Mediterranean was an Axis lake, upon which Allied convoys ventured only at certain and terrible cost, the British Navy kept pushing supplies through to Malta. Even hotter than the Barents Sea was the narrow Sicilian Channel, swarming with Axis bombers, torpedo planes, and fighters.
Planes!
To Londonderry, to Murmansk, and to Malta. Under a hail of bombs and through the wolf packs, the Atlantic convoys got through. Meanwhile, with the Japanese advancing throughout the whole Western Pacific, in early 1942, the commanding officer of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, Admiral Chester Nimitz, faced a formidable task. The Philippines were gone, and Hong Kong and Singapore were going, as Japan capitalized on the paralyzing blow at Pearl Harbor. With much of his fleet either sunk or in dry dock, Admiral Nimitz first had to establish a supply line to Australia through waters dangerously close to enemy bases. The first few convoys of troops and supplies sailed to the southwest by roundabout routes to evade Japanese forces. They got through, but too much time was lost. For every day, the enemy was smashing his way closer to Australia. Serious threat to American convoy lanes were the Gilbert and Marshall Islands, bristling with Japanese airfields and naval bases. With what forces were available, these bases had to be neutralized. A carrier striking force was sent out to do the job. This was the first action in which a naval force, built up around the carrier, had ever entered. In a maneuver that completely baffled the enemy, the task force struck, and struck hard. The Japanese were caught flat-footed. Their installations were rendered useless, and the route to Australia was safe for many months to come. During these months, men and supplies poured in ever-mounting numbers into Australia and New Zealand. New Caledonia and a score of outlying island bases were thus secured from Japanese seizure. By the spring of 1942, the Pacific Fleet, both on the surface and in the air, was beginning to regain its strength, and none too soon.